What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is The Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 9, Honor. So, yeah, at the end of the mid-season finale, I did, in fact, express my frustration with the decision of the writers to kill off Carl. With that being said, I'm going to kind of do not necessarily a 180 here, because I still feel like they didn't handle it very well, just in the way that they told his story. But they did sort of make it up for it a bit in this episode by actually giving us some more of his story. But the problem is that we didn't get to experience that because they didn't give any sort of, like, they hardly had him for most of this season. And that is one of the problems that I did have with it. We do get to see kind of after what happens with the walker, after he gets bit, we do get to see him a little bit more. They do a scene where we get to see him, doing stuff at Alexandria, talking to the guy that he brought back, writing letters to everybody, kind of living a bit carefree because he realizes these are his last days and he wants to make sure that he goes out living right. So he's making sure that everybody's prepared. He's helping this guy as much as he can. And like I said, he wrote some letters to make sure everybody, he told everybody goodbye. And I'm sure Enid will probably be one of the most broken up to not get to say goodbye to him just because they had a little thing. Of course, I'm sure the people who knew him for a long time, Maggie will probably be distraught to hear. Carol will be extremely upset whenever they find out. But I do feel like that little romantic connection is probably going to break her little heart. So, it'll be interesting to see how they handle telling everybody else. But what I really did like about that scene is just we get to see the moments that they didn't show us for the entirety of the first half of the season. And that is part of the problem I did have with them killing him off in the first place. But we do get a good resolution for his story, and it almost makes sense now the way that they set it up. And looking back now, I can officially say that it does help that they sort of connected the stories. Because we've seen the scene of Rick, he's like looking watery eyed, just like what looks like watercolors all over his face. And he's like having flash forwards to the future and seeing this world where everybody's living peacefully. He's older, all these other people are older, and they're with him. And I'm just like, okay, so what is this exactly? What is that supposed to be? Well, they finally tie it in with this story because we hear at the end of the episode Carl telling him that if he could be the same man that he was whenever he invited the people from Woodbury in to live with them, even though they were enemies, if he could be that man again, he's seen this world where they could all live in peace and harmony. And so I realize now, probably not a flash forward to the future if I had to guess. I doubt it is. Who knows? Maybe they'll actually go this far and be like, oh yeah, everybody's going to live through all of this, guys. All these characters that you might be worried about that they might die. No, look, they made it, see? I feel like, though, that this is him having a dream. Because we see at the end of the episode, he's sitting under this tree and he wakes up. And so I feel like he had a dream based off of what Carl told him. And, seeing all these people, seeing this world of peace and harmony. They're in Alexandria living together. That's why Carl is still there, because he dreams that Carl made it through, and just that would be the perfect world for him. Eugene is there. But the most important piece of all happens right at the end of the episode. We see Judith walking up, older Judith walking up to some guy. All of a sudden stands up, and it's Negan. He's like, hey, how you doing today, darling? So, kind of playing at the thought of maybe Rick is going to try to get through to even Negan and convince him to try to live in this world together. I don't see that happening. I mean, I know they've sort of played up whenever Father Gabriel was talking to Negan. He did talk to, or try to reason with the more sensible side of him, which I do find very interesting, and I'm wondering if maybe that will play some part later on down the line. But I really, really doubt that Negan's going to just go full 180 and be like, you know what, Rick, you're right. I think we can live together. Let's all do this, ladies and gentlemen. No more of my world order. No, it's going to be peace and harmony from now on. Lucille, I don't even need you anymore. Get out of here. I don't see that happening. If they do that, I feel like a lot of people would probably rage and be super pissed off. Because that's not, that is what they're trying to achieve, is this peace and harmony where people can live together, and work together to try to rebuild the world. Because that's kind of been the idea since season one, is trying to get through this apocalypse and trying to recreate the world because it's been destroyed. So it would sort of make sense that they do need to start working together with people and not fighting so much. However, because we need a show and because we have to have some sort of semblance of, okay, there's tension, there's stuff going on because that's the type of show this is, that's why Negan's group has been the antagonist. So I feel like if it's going to end with everybody in Negan's group joining Rick's side and them working together, I feel like that's more final episode of the show type of thing. Like they all managed to work together, live in peace and harmony, and then boom, they managed to work together to create a new world that, yes, they still have to deal with the walkers, but they're starting to rebuild and regrow. I feel like that's more in-game type of stuff. And I feel like Negan has just done so much that you almost have to kill him off at this point. I get what they're going for with the whole, oh, you got to be friends, but there are certain people that you just cannot be friends with. You cannot reason with. Take Gregory, for example. You try to be nice to him. Maggie tried to give him a place in Hilltop. He kept just backbiting him. He kept doing things that just kept undercutting her power. And so finally she's just like, you know what? You're done. Throws him in prison. Because sometimes you have to do that with people like him and people like Negan. So I feel like that's where they're going from there. But it was a very emotional episode as far as Carl is concerned. A lot of people got their final words with him. I will say I was disappointed some of them didn't say final words. Like you had a lot of the Alexandrians sitting outside. None of them came in to say goodbye to Carl. Rosita, what's her name? The woman. She was girlfriends with the doctor. Why do I forget her name all of a sudden? She hasn't been that important anyway. But yeah, none of them came inside to say, goodbye to Carl. There was a little scene with Daryl where he's just like, you did all this, man. You saved him. That's on you. And, just nice little words at the end. But it didn't really feel like something where, you've been with this kid since he was a kid. And now he is more of an adult. And he sacrificed himself to help this guy and, sacrificed himself to help all these people. That's more than just you did good, kid. That's like a, emotional scene where Daryl gives him a hug or something. He shows a bit of emotion. So I will say I'm a bit disappointed that they didn't really go that far, but for the rest of the episode with Rick and Michonne, the way they handled that was very well done, and I really did like all of their scenes together. I also like how it ran parallel with what was going on at the Kingdom. So we see Gavin is pretty much like, we're going to take you, Ezekiel, and you're going to die to Negan's hands now. Like, that's it. We see at the beginning of the episode when they're showing the flashback to Carl and how he's doing, they also show a flashback to Morgan sitting in the tower, and he sees them clearing out walkers to clear a path. What I will say is I was a bit disappointed he didn't try to deter them at all. Like, he sees them doing it, and I'm instantly like, okay, they're creating a path, obviously. And Morgan's just like, huh. They're creating a path. I'm like, really? You think? It took him forever to figure out, and by the time he said anything about it, all of a sudden shooting at him and he has to duck and cover. So I will say Morgan did play a little bit of part in letting them out because he didn't make the connection quick enough. But we do see he sees Gavin and his people driving towards the Kingdom, and that's how he does get there. And then obviously Carol's like, I'm going to go back. This one kid who is an idiot is just like, I can go with you. Morgan told me how to handle a stick, so I can help you fight. I'm just like, good reading of the lines, kids. Good job. I could see them holding the poster card behind the camera as you're like, I can do it. I can help you. Choose better children actors, please. So we see Carol and Morgan are just tearing everybody apart in there. Carol looks like she's more knocking them out, whereas Morgan's just like stick to the throat, killing everybody in sight. And even like these two guys loading up this truck, all of a sudden he goes and attacks him, even though Carol's like, "Stop! What are you doing? We got things to do." And so he goes, takes him out. This one guy comes out with a gun. Carol takes him out. And so it's almost like the body count is just piling up. And you can see that Morgan is getting more and more, or less and less talkative. More and more less talkative. He's not saying much. He's turning more into that robot that we saw him earlier in the season when he was fighting Jesus. Like the blank stare, just the way he walks, it looked like watching a Terminator. And it's honestly very terrifying. Like, even though I know he's a good guy, even though I know he's on our side, it's still terrifying to watch because you feel like he's capable of anything, which makes it even more intense when they're in this theater and they're shooting everybody up and this one guy tackles him to the ground and he's just like fighting him, got his hand to the throat, and then just reaches inside this wound that he has in his stomach, rips out his intestine. Rips out the intestine of this guy. Don't get me wrong. Negan has done a lot of terrible, terrible things. And he is a man to be feared, as is Rick. They both have that thing about them that's just like, I do not want to mess with you because I feel like if I do, I'll be starting something that I would not be able to finish. But if I were to get into a fight with Negan, Rick, or Morgan, I can tell you for sure Morgan would scare the crap out of me more than the other two. Because those two would at least make it funny as, Negan would make it funny as I die. Rick would make my death a quick one. Morgan, I feel like, would just beat me into submission until I could not feel pain anymore, and then would rip out my stomach or something. It's scary. He is a scary person whenever he turns into this Terminator type of thing, and it makes it even better because Gavin now is being chased by Morgan. And something about Gavin always just he wasn't quite Dwight, the squirrely little weasel who's just doing. He's not quite, similar to another name I'm forgetting. Eugene. Hello. He's not quite Eugene either, where he's just doing everything it takes to survive. He just seemed kind of like a little bit of a, he's not intimidating, but he thinks he is type of thing. Because it felt like he didn't really want to do anything. He didn't really want to be there. I don't know. There was just something about him that I'm just like, I like you least of all. There are other things about some of the other bad guys that I could grab onto. Simon is kind of a spaz, feels like I'm watching Trevor from GTA 5, which, same actor. Eugene and Dwight are annoying, but I can kind of laugh at some of the funny scenes between them, where they're both being kind of weaselly. But Gavin was just always kind of like that one guy. He's dealing with the kingdom, and that's all he is. There's nothing really else to him. And it's almost like once things started getting a little bit heated, all of a sudden he turned to this guy who he sounded like he wanted to be intimidating, but he never really was. And so whenever he's talking to Ezekiel through most of this episode, you can see he's just like, don't you understand? You've lost. I win. You're going to die. I'm going to live. This is how it's going to be. And Ezekiel's just like, nope. You just see him through most of the episode, toying with him a little bit, like it's not too late for you to turn back from where you came. Repeating the words back to him that he was saying. And so whenever he gets shot in the knee by, I think Carol shot him maybe, but he gets shot in the knee and then he sees Morgan rip the guy intestine out and he's just like, oh, he's coming for me now. And takes off out the door, running away from him, terrified. And then there's this scene where he's hiding inside of a container and then Morgan's shadow appears and goes away. And then opens the door and he falls back right into Morgan's path. And so then it comes down, and this is where they're showing the parallel, Carl's talking to Rick about you can be that man again, the better man, the one that can live with everyone. While we hear on the other side, Morgan trying to be told the same thing, but he's like, I can't. It's kind of bizarre to think that when Rick and Morgan first met, it was like Rick was kind of a novice to this whole world. He didn't know what was going on. And Morgan was he'd kind of figured things out. So he learned how to survive a little bit, and he had his son. Second time they met, Rick was a little bit more of a mature person. He had learned how to live, whereas Morgan kind of lost his mind a little bit, was crazy. So, it didn't really seem like a sane person who was able to survive, whereas Rick seemed like he was able to survive for a while. And then they meet again in Alexandria. Rick is a crazy person, and he's lost his mind. He just straight up killed somebody covered in blood. No, that's when he had ripped the throat of the walker out because he had been attacked by one. So he's covered in blood, and then he kills a guy. And then Morgan walks in, and he's all about peace. And he's just like, look, we don't need to kill, guys. And Rick's like, we have to kill. And now it's like they've gone back again. And I feel like they're never really in sync, which is weird because Morgan is the first person that Rick ever met. So I'm just like, why do they keep doing this? Why is it like whenever Rick makes a change over to one side, it's like Morgan goes to the other side? And it's not because, it's not anything they're doing, it's the writers. The writers are constantly having them switch sides. I just feel like at some point it's getting old. You've done this already. But ultimately he's sitting there in front of Gavin and he's just like, I have to kill him. And so he goes to, and then all of a sudden through the back of his throat comes a stick. And then he falls over dead, and then there's a little idiot kid who's like, I can help you. I know how to handle a stick. I don't know why. I mean, it was kind of like, holy crap, kid. What the heck are you doing? Why did you need to kill him? But whatever the case, now the kid is a killer. Ezekiel is trying to comfort him and make him not be a killer. And that's pretty much all for this first episode of the 3 that I've got to watch. So now on to the next one. See you there. And now episode 10, The Lost and the Plunderers. So this one, first of all, I really like how it's set up because it makes my job reviewing it a whole lot easier, because it's like instead of having to try to pick it apart piece by piece, they actually do it story by story this time, so I can tackle it piece by piece much easier. But yeah, I mean it's told from many different kind of stories going on about the same time, all leading up to one moment that obviously is the biggest part of this episode. But first of all, we start off with Michonne's story, and basically what happens, we see right after what happened, at the end of last episode, Carl killing himself and then them burying the body. We see them packing up to try to go. They're still in Alexandria, and it's like she doesn't want really to leave. And part of the frustration I have with this is it's like she looks at all this stuff, she starts getting sentimental, I get that, but then she puts herself at risk, trying to save a burning gazebo, which you could easily just rebuild, exactly like it was, or something. But it's already pretty much destroyed, and it's on fire, and she tries to go put out the fire, and it nearly gets her and Rick killed in the process. It's kind of stupid. I get how she's feeling right now, but you just lost somebody important, and Rick just lost his son. Why would you put yourself in harm's way? That's just going to cause Rick even more pain if you get hurt in the process. So I thought that was really strange of her. But then she realizes that Carl wrote a lot of different letters, and he even wrote one to Negan. So he wrote it. That was pretty surprising to me, but it also kind of fits Carl's character, and why he went out the way he did is because he's trying to create peace. So of course, that's pretty much where Michonne leaves off. They go to the junkyard place to try to talk to them, and then find a bunch of walkers that are waiting for him. And so then we cut to Negan's side of the story. He's talking to Simon and pretty much is telling him, look, we need to get this wrapped up. We need to try to get everybody back in, try to get this solved as quick as possible. And so this is the first sort of descent that we see from Simon in this episode. And this is one of the things that has been very interesting so far this season, is getting to see the different characters that are a part of Negan's group, because each one kind of feels like their own type of person. Simon always seemed like the wild card to me, and especially when we got to see more of him later on, near the mid-season finale, we got to see a little bit more just how ruthless he is. Negan is ruthless, but in a way where he wants to try to work together with everyone. It's more of a dictatorship. Simon just feels like an anarchist to me. Like, he's just willing to go kill everyone because he just gets pissed off. So he's frustrated with Negan because Negan's not really like saying, "Hey, let's just go kill everyone." He's telling him, "Go to the junkyard people, kill one, and make a statement. Get him back on our side." And then they get a box that Maggie sent, the one of the dead prisoners, kind of saying, you killed one of our people. Here's one of yours. We have 38 more. Letting them know, don't mess with us again. And so, of course, Simon sees that it's one of his guys from the whenever they took prisoners at the satellite plant, and he's super pissed. Now he wants to go kill all of them, but Negan really shuts him down. He's like, "Do your job." So we're seeing a lot of friction there, and that's part of what makes what comes later very interesting. But first, we take a little detour to Enid and Aaron. They go to the Oceanside, and right after Aaron has killed Sydney's grandmother, and so not much really happens. They threaten to kill them, and then Enid and Aaron kind of have a little talk with Sydney, telling her, "Look, this is your choice. We're not your enemies. You don't want to do this. If you do, we'll just our people will come and wipe you out eventually." And so Sydney's just like, "Okay, let him go. We're not going to help you, but we're not going to kill you either." And then Aaron decides he wants to stay, and Enid's, I guess, going to head back and tell them what happened, or everybody else what happened. The one thing that I will say is a little bit frustrating in this is Enid acts like she had no choice but to kill the grandmother. In my opinion, I mean, she wasn't. It wasn't like she had a gun up to Aaron's head or had a knife up to his throat. I don't think it seemed like she was just choking him out. It could have been as simple as, "Hey, I've got a gun. Stand down." Threaten her to make sure she didn't kill Aaron, but she just went straight over and bam, bam. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand it's kind of weird that the grandmother was attacking them in the first place, but it seemed like you did have a few more choices than just going and straight up killing her. So it felt like she was just justifying, "Oh, I had no choice. Your grandmother, she's the one that got herself killed." I'm like, maybe she did, maybe she didn't. It kind of depends on what point of view you look at it with. And then we go to Simon's story, and he goes to the junkyard people, and he's talking to them, and just really, you could tell he wants to take them out. He wants to deliver a message. He wants to get out this rage and aggression that you can tell he's clearly pent up. And so he's just taunting Jadis, taunting her, gets them to hand over all of their weapons, and then it's just like, I don't know if you truly understand what an apology is. And she's like, "There is remorse." And then he shoots, I think it was her husband. I don't know, it was somebody important to her. And he's like, "I think you need to try again because I don't really believe you." And she's like, "There is remorse." And then he shoots her right hand woman. And then he's just like, "Say it one more time." And then she knocks him down. It's like, "There is remorse." He's like, "No, no, no. You just made a mistake." And then tells his guys, "Light him up," and they shoot everyone. And so once again, it's very interesting because what's Negan going to do when he finds out? And whenever he's talking to Rick later, I kind of assume Rick would say something about it. He never does, so maybe he will in the next episode. But it is pretty interesting to see Simon just completely go against Negan there and completely go against what he asked him to do. Because that is complete insubordination, and I know for a fact Negan's not going to let that happen, let it slide. So, yeah, it was pretty interesting to see Simon just go off the handle and completely go against whatever Negan asked him to do. Ultimately, he comes back with all the weapons and, of course, lies to Negan about it, which is just going to make it worse for him later on. But then we go to Jadis' story, and this is after everything that happened. We're back with Rick and Michonne. They're fighting off all the walkers, and then find her up there. And pretty much, she's asking them, "Hey, let me come with you." And Rick is just like, "No." Just straight up tells her no, and then leaves with Michonne. And then she turns on the meat grinder, or not the meat grinder, the stuff they use at the garbage, to crush it down. She turns it on, leads all the walkers into it, and then, gets rid of all the walkers. And so I kind of feel like she's maybe a little bit of a wild card right now. She doesn't, obviously she's against the Saviors because of what they did to her people, but I feel like she's not really going to be on Rick's side either because he chose not to help her. And of course this leads to Rick's side of the story where one of the first things they show is Michonne talking to him and saying, "Look, this is kind of what Carl was talking about. He wanted you to help people like Jadis." And he's just saying, I just wanted her gone. I wanted her out of the picture. So it's clear that there's still a little bit of disconnect there about Carl and what he wanted. And it's like Rick, it's really hard to say what's going through his mind right now. You can see he's clearly upset, but it's not obvious to me what exactly he's feeling. Whether he's feeling regret for, what he did to Jadis, or whether he's just upset about Carl and really sad. It's really kind of hard to see. But ultimately, he decides to take a moment, grabs his letter and Negan's letter, and the walkie-talkie. And we saw earlier one of the guys saying, "Hey, Negan, it's Rick on the radio." And so he does read Negan's letter from Carl, and then calls him up, and then they have a conversation. And this part of it just really got to me because it's so interesting to see these two characters talking to each other. Anytime they're on together, it just really works because they're both such compelling characters. Negan is such a great antagonist, and Rick is such a good protagonist right now that they're really meshing well together. And so they just have this conversation where, Rick is saying, "Look, Carl wanted us to have peace. He wanted me to stop. He wanted you to stop. But that's not going to happen. You have to die. I'm going to kill you." And then Negan, of course, hearing Carl's dead, is just really torn up about it. And, not surprisingly, we even saw earlier in the episode where he's completely blown away that Carl's just completely one-upped him, at Alexandria. Because Carl had that plan in place and managed to kind of stall for a second and, play him for a bit. And he's just sitting there in awe of Carl. He's just like, man, that kid's got what it takes. He's got what it takes to be a part of this. And so you can clear there's a lot of respect for Carl. And then when he finds out Carl's dead, the reaction is just perfect. It's exactly what you'd expect, from somebody who respected Carl that much. Even if he is the antagonist, even if he is on the opposite side, he's still torn up about it. And on top of that, one of the things that really makes this a compelling scene is he starts blaming Rick for it. And of course, Rick is already completely broken up because Carl is his son and now he's gone. But now Rick is blaming him by saying, if you had not just gone to do all of this, if you hadn't tried to stand up and tried to fight me, you could have been there to keep him from doing something stupid and getting himself killed. And he's not entirely wrong. That is the thing that makes this so interesting about Negan, is that he's not 100% wrong. Saving people. He does keep people alive. It's just not quite the right way. With Carl, yes, Rick, if he hadn't stood up for what he believed in and tried to fight back against Negan, yes, he might have been there to keep Carl from going out and getting himself bit, but at the same time, he's not entirely right either, because part of what made Carl do that is because of what he believes, trying to reach out to other people and bring them in to help. So he would have done it either way. And on top of that, I don't think he would have been happy with his dad if his dad just kind of laid over and said, "Nah, I'm going to do whatever Negan says." So it's kind of a double-ended sword where Rick ultimately is sort of at fault for Carl's death, but Negan also is too because of, what he forced Rick to do and, everything that's happened up until now. So I find it very interesting. This little dialogue at the end is very compelling. It's very emotional, and ultimately it ends on Negan saying, "You failed as a leader and you failed ultimately as a father." And that's how the episode ends. I'm just like, those are some really strong words to end on. And we don't even get to really see Rick's reaction. We just see from a distance, we see his head drop. So, very, very interesting way to end the episode. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next. There is a possibility, like I said, I kind of wondered if maybe Rick was going to tell him, you talk about saving people and then you go and massacre everyone at the junkyard. And then, of course, he'll be like, Simon, what's he talking about? Leading to Simon getting his retribution. But I feel like there is going to be a bit of a shuffle of kind of some ideologies and some personnel as well. I feel like Simon's probably going to be gone because I doubt word of what happened at the junkyard. I doubt it's not going to get back to Negan in some form or fashion. And so at that point, Simon's just going to be out. As far as, what I was saying the last episode about everybody coming together and working together, even Negan, it's looking obviously not very likely. And I thought that from the very beginning. But it is interesting to see that Rick isn't really going with what Carl said right now. I find that interesting just because it seemed like that was going to maybe play into the arc a little bit. You know, Carl's arc seemed to be trying to lead this world in a new direction instead of fighting and trying to fight each other for resources and, you know, one person taking all of it for protection or whatever, trying to lead it to where everybody's working together, everybody's doing their part to make this world a better place and trying to recreate it from the ground up. It seemed like that was his arc, and then they killed him off, and then it made it seem like, okay, maybe Rick's going to take it. Maybe Rick's going to look at it with a new eye and maybe take what Carl said and try to apply it to his life. You know, not necessarily to Negan, because like I said, Negan is just a bad guy and probably needs to be taken out. But as far as, you know, like Jadis, it seemed like to me that would have been the perfect place to start with him. You know, he doesn't really like Jadis, he doesn't really trust her, but she's somebody that can help them. She's somebody that needs help on top of it. And you help her, there's a good chance she might help you later on. And yet he doesn't. He still goes against what Carl says. And so I kind of feel like Carl's arc still isn't really completed until Rick realizes that. And so I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know if Rick's just going to continue to fight or whatever. But it feels like they haven't really done much different since Carl's death. And that is a little bit disappointing. But anyway, that's it for this one. On to the final of these 3 episodes before I'm finally caught up. See you there. And now, finally, episode 11, Dead or Alive, or some shit in between. Had to finish it off. So this one continues a lot of the stories where they left off. The only one that we really don't get much continuation on is Rick and Michonne. I really wanted to see if there was going to be maybe some more of that conversation between Rick and Negan, you know, because it kind of just left off with what sounded like, you know, Negan bashing Rick, and then there was no response. I feel like Rick may have had something to say after that, but I don't know, apparently there was nothing else in that conversation that mattered. Either that or they are saving something, because, I mean, I feel like Rick would have to say something about what happened at the junkyard, because Simon came back and lied to Negan about what happened, didn't tell him anything about it, and Negan, of course, is telling Rick, I save people, that is what I do, I fight to keep them alive, that's what I try to do for you guys. And I imagine Rick would have had something to say about that, considering he just saw what they did at the junkyard, even though Negan doesn't know about it. And so I feel like he would say something along the lines of, you really consider what you did at the junkyard saving? He's like, what do you mean? Same as usual. No, you killed everyone at that. No, Simon just came back. He told me he did exactly what I said, just one person. I feel like that conversation should have happened. So if it didn't, I don't know, I feel like they made a mistake there. You know, the writers, that's something that naturally would have been said in that conversation. I mean, I get Rick was very distraught about what happened with Carl, but at the same time, that is something that it's a natural progression of that conversation. So maybe he did say something, and maybe, you know, we'll see in the next episode whenever Negan sees Simon again, he'll say something to him, and we'll see what Rick said. I don't know. Whatever the case, though, this one is mainly about three different stories, realistically. The first one is about all of the Alexandrian survivors heading towards Hilltop. Dwight tells them there's this place, it's a swamp. Negan said it was way too dangerous to go in there, so there's no way his guys would be in there. You know, he said when he was looking for a path that would be the last place to go. And so he's like, well, most likely that means they're not in there, so let's try to head through there. And so we get, kind of typical for what Tara's been these days, stupid stuff. And honestly, she's just become probably my least favorite character on the show right now, because she's just an idiot. You know, there's no real purpose to her other than, oh, you killed my girlfriend, so now I'm mad at you and I want to kill you, even though it doesn't make any sense. It's just really frustrating, you know, because she's putting people at harm's way. She tries to kill Dwight, which ends up giving him back to Negan, even though he could have helped them. Luckily for him, for some reason, that one girl that saw him kill other people, for some reason, she never made it back to the Saviors. So either she got lost, or maybe, I don't know what could have happened to her. You know, I find it weird that she hasn't made it back yet. So, who knows, maybe she'll show up later and be like, I got a detour or something, and then she'll be like, Dwight betrayed us. Whatever the case, he is able to go back to Negan for now, and, you know, pretend to help out. but he does sort of do it in an attempt to lead the saviors that were about to head into the swamp away. And so, of course, Tara sees that and like, oh, he actually saved us. I can't believe it. Even though he's done nothing but help them, she's just freaking got the blinders on. Oh, he killed my girlfriend. I don't care about anything else. I don't care if he can help us win this war and kill Negan, kill the evil bastard that's been hunting us down. I want him dead. It's like Daryl even said, look, you can do it later, but we need him right now. We need him to help us right now. And even Dwight is like, look, I know what comes after. I know you're going to kill me. I get that. But I'd want to help you win first. I want to see Negan dead before I die. And yet she doesn't care. And it's like, come on, just stop being a stupid and do what's right. So whatever the case, he ends up going back with the Saviors. And obviously everyone is rightfully pissed at her. Daryl yells at her. And, it's one of those scenes where it's nice to see that she does sort of get yelled at for what happened. It wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, you tried to kill him? Oh, good job, or something like that. Now, she did pay the price for it. Well, kind of. It's one of those things, now she can't kill him, so it's kind of bad for her, but it's also bad for the rest of the group, so it just hurt everybody to lose Dwight to, back to the Saviors. But we do see everyone makes it back, or everyone makes it to Hilltop, and there is a scene where, whenever everyone finds out about Carl, you see Maggie is just completely taken aback. Enid, as I said, completely heartbroken, and then Carol also just that look of, I can't believe that's not real. This isn't possible. And it's one of those scenes where I do kind of wish that I could hear things that were said. They did that. Oh, it's quiet, just the music is playing, and we see the reactions. But I do kind of wish I could hear a little bit of what's going on, even though it still was emotionally effective. But with that being said, let's go to Hilltop now. We see that they're having some difficulty because Maggie is pretty much running out of resources. And so it's getting very hard for them. They're not really sure what to do with the prisoners. They're just kind of keeping them in there. They realize that rations are low, and that is, even without feeding the prisoners, the rations are still low anyway. Now that Alexandria has arrived, I feel like it's either going to make it easier or more difficult. I'm not entirely sure. Part of it, I think that now the Alexandrians can help with foraging and trying to find food, but also at the same time, it's like, but you have more mouths to feed, so I don't know if they're going to be able to make up the difference. But I assume that it's going to probably push their timeline a little bit forward, where now you have to start doing something to try to get more food for everyone. But it is kind of they don't really know what to do with the prisoners. Do we just not deal with them? Do we just keep them in the cage? This one guy's like, look, we'll help out. You can take our guns if you want to, but just let us do something. We've been on our best behavior here, so let us do stuff. Now, I don't know if this guy is being for real, because there's that one scene where he's talking to the one guy who's just being a total dick to everyone. I kind of feel like he might be trying to play them to drop their guard a little bit. Maybe he actually, he's just like, you know what, screw it, I don't want to be locked up in a cage. Hell, I'll help you. At least until the Saviors arrive, then he might be like, okay, yeah, I'm back on Negan's side. But who knows? We'll see what's happening with this one guy. And then, of course, Gregory is still alive for some reason, because Maggie still hasn't lost her temper with him once, even though he's been nothing but just an awful person. But then we also see a little bit of a story developing with Carol Morgan and that one kid that can't act. They're sitting there watching the guys in the pen, and the one kid with the long hair that's been messing with Morgan this whole time is like, hey, you need to let that kid out of here. He doesn't need to see all this stuff, Morgan. Come on. And of course, this is the guy that killed his older brother. And so the kid's just like, dude, what do you kill my older brother? And then Carol's just like, stop. You don't need to do all that. And so we get to the end of the episode, and Carol hears about what happened with Carl. And they're just like, the kid's like, how did he die? Was it one of them? She's like, no, he died helping a stranger. And that's when Morgan kind of gets this look on his face, like he understands what he needs to do. Because Carol does have a little bit of a pop-off on him earlier in the episode where, the kid is clearly lost. He's he killed somebody. And Morgan's just like, so it means he has what it takes to survive. She's like, no, it means that he's gonna feel bad about it. He just doesn't know it yet. Neither do you. And you're talking about how he's sort of losing himself. And so whenever he hears about what Carl did, it's almost like he realizes that this kid doesn't need to follow down his path. And so he says, look, Gavin's the one that killed your older brother, even though it was the guy with the long hair in there. It's just like, you got him already. And then walks away. I'm just like, good for you, Morgan. Good for you that you managed to be nice to the kid. And of course, I'm sure that one guy with the long hair will eventually be like, yeah, man, I killed your older brother. What you gonna do about it? Because he's just, I don't know, he's tempting his own death for some reason. But that's how their little story ends. And then the last story to talk about is, it's kind of a little bit involving Negan and Eugene as well, but it's mainly about Father Gabriel and the doctor that he escaped with, Dr. Carson. So Gabriel, of course, is just, he wants to believe that God's got a plan. He wants to believe all this stuff. And for most of the episode, it feels like there is. You know, they find this shack. Oh, I can't believe we found this place. He's like, well, there must be something here then. There's a radio. Maybe we can use it to call people. And Carson's just like, nah, there's no way. And then it opens the door and the guy killed himself. He's like, I don't think that happened. But then all of a sudden, like, they're sitting there and he finds antibiotics. He's like, oh, well, that's interesting. And he gives him the antibiotics. His fever's going away. It looks like he's going to be okay. But his vision is nearly gone. And he's just like, how can you still be happy? You know, you're going to lose your vision. How can you be okay with that? And all of a sudden he knocks this thing off, this looks like a piggy bank. It breaks open and they find car keys and a museum thing, or a map to a museum where the car is. And it's just kind of like, everything's working out. This is great. And I'm just like, something's going to go wrong. I know it. I can see it coming. Because there's no way like, oh, all these great things are happening and nothing bad is going to happen at all. Because it just seems like that's what the show wants to do. It wants to get your hopes up and be like, guys, Carson and Father Gabriel are going to be okay. And then Carson's walking out into the yard and Father Gabriel manages to see this sign that says danger traps. He's like, doctor, wait. And then he steps in a trap. And then these walkers start coming after him. I'm just like... But then he manages to fight one off. The other one is on top of him and he's sitting there trying to wrestle it. Father Gabriel manages to make it out into the yard, grab the gun, trusts in God, and then has a shot, kills the walker. It's like, hey, it's all good, but I'm still not quite sure because there's still 15 minutes in the timeline, so there's still something that probably is going to happen, right? Sure enough, they get to the Jeep. They get in there and it's just like, looks like everything's okay after all. And they're all, this is awesome, man. Yeah, high five. We're the best. Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you, God. And then all of a sudden the Saviors show up. I'm just like, God. What? And the last like 5 minutes, all the good feeling, all of the happy things that happened, it just sort of, it sucks. You know, the Saviors show up, they put them in the back, or they put Father Gabriel and Dr. Carson in the back of the truck, and then Dr. Carson looks at him and is like, I think I know what you're talking about now, because, you know, Father Gabriel's saying, oh, he's still got a plan, and he's just like, I think I see what you mean, and then looks over, and then Father Gabriel looks over and sees a gun, Dr. Carson grabs it, goes to shoot, and then gets shot and dies. And, God, I mean, I know that most of the actors on the show are good. You know, they've always had fairly good actors. They've done very good jobs with their parts. And, you know, the emotions have been believable. But whenever he dies, Father Gabriel's reaction just really, really, really nailed it. Like, the sadness in his voice and just the look on his face. He looks like his faith just got destroyed. You know, like, if you've ever seen a man who's lost his faith, that was it. And it was just, it was an emotional scene. And it nearly got to me. I didn't cry, but it nearly got to me. And so, of course, you know, he's heading back now with the Saviors. Luckily, you know, he doesn't know this yet, but I think once he hears that Carl managed to find a doctor and help him, I think he's going to see, there was a plan after all. And, you know, now they do have a doctor, even though it's not Dr. Carson. But with that being said, he ends up going back. We do see an early scene between Negan and Eugene where Negan's trying to find out what happened with Carson and Gabriel. And, of course, Eugene's just like, I don't know. And it's probably like, it's probably that Dr. Carson. He's not one of us. And then Eugene's just like, yeah, I that sounds like a good one to me. So ultimately, whenever he gets them back, we see he told Eugene to go start making bullets. And so they bring Father Gabriel in. Gabriel blames Carson for him able to get out. And then Eugene tells Negan, look, these bullets aren't going to be done in time. And of course, Negan's not okay with that at all. He's just like, no, that's not good enough. And you can see he's pissed off, and Eugene's just like, well, maybe we can go medieval and start flinging like body parts and all that psychological torture we could do to him. And then Negan just gets this look on his face. You could tell he's got an idea. And so sure enough, we get to that final scene where he's talking to everyone and talking about how just whatever is inside the walkers, if it gets inside of you, you become part of the club. And so he like uses Lucille to rip off a lot of his like skin and flesh and blood from one of the walkers on the fence. And then starts talking about, if they just get some of this in them, now they become part of the club, and that's the plan. So we're going to bring them back dead or alive or some shit in between. So I don't really know exactly what the plan is with that. The thing is, I feel like we saw the kingdom feeding walkers to the pigs and then giving those pigs over to the saviors, which means I feel like if the walkers actually did affect them, if you like got it inside of you, I feel like the saviors should be affected in some way. Unless because it went through the pigs first and like the pigs managed to get out whatever virus is whatever was affecting them. I feel like maybe that's why they weren't affected by it. I don't know. Maybe if it just directly gets inside of you, that's what it is. Whatever the case, I feel like they're probably going to do something along the lines of trying to get them infected by, like, maybe coating bullets with it or coating their weapons with it. So whenever they stab them, it gets that virus inside of them and then that will kill them in a few days. That might be what they're thinking. So almost like a poison type of, like poison arrows, poison knives. So even though it's not quite, the ammunition they need, it's much more lethal if you do manage to get a hit in. So maybe that's the thought. But whatever the case, I mean, this was a good episode, even though I do have a few problems, with Tara being an idiot. The fact that we didn't continue that scene with Negan and Rick, even though I felt like it should have continued a little bit. But aside from that, it was a good episode. And it feels like things are really starting to get going, as far as like the story itself. It feels like everybody's coming together. Rick and Michonne show up at Hilltop at the end of the episode. We see Maggie trying to work more with the prisoners, realizing the value of what happened, seeing the doctor that Carl saved. She realizes, maybe we should try to help these people. And so she does start letting them out in pairs. And just, it feels like things are really starting to come together overall. And that also makes me feel like, well, that means things are really about to heat up as far as the main story as well. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what they got next. It's been very interesting so far, and that's about it for these 3 episodes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts over these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Walking Dead reviews. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.